Posso partire?
Non vedo ancora nessuno collegato.
Ok, perfetto. Allora fammi sapere perché... Buonasera a tutti, siamo in attesa delle persone che si stanno pian piano collegando, quindi un attimo di pazienza. Diamo tempo alle persone di accedere e tra qualche minuto partiamo, quindi un attimo di pazienza per lasciare tempo alle persone di accedere alla diretta. Allora, in attesa ancora, lasciamo collegare le persone. Allora, buonasera a tutti, siamo ancora in attesa perché pian piano stanno accedendo le persone, un attimo di pazienza. Un attimo di pazienza. Aspettiamo ancora qualche minuto a coloro che sono collegate perché si stanno collegando le persone e quindi attendiamo ancora qualche minuto e poi cominciamo. Benissimo, mi dicono che la diretta è partita e allora cominciamo. Buonasera a tutti, benvenuti. Welcome to everybody. I'm Valentina Foschi. We're going to start with the second webinar of Think Outside the Box series 2022-2023. In realtà lascio subito la parola la diretta è partita e allora lascio subito la parola al dirigente scolastico, al preside professor Giombi, che ringrazio per essere con noi questo pomeriggio perché poi ha tutta una serie di altri impegni istituzionali, quindi lascio subito la parola a lui per un benvenuto da parte sua a tutti i partecipanti. Grazie professor Giombi.
È davvero soltanto un benvenuto e nulla più per questo secondo appuntamento di questa serie annuale, e oltre al benvenuto c'è anche naturalmente il ringraziamento sia a chi lavora per questa iniziativa, in particolare la professoressa Foschi, sia ai nostri partner istituzionali, quindi Macmillan Education e Corica Milletti, oltre alla biblioteca Mediateca Montanari di Fano, qui nell'assessorato di biblioteche del comune di Fano. Grazie ancora, ed è giusto solo che io ascolti, cedendo la parola ai relatori, a chi gestisce questa iniziativa di questa sera. Grazie e buon lavoro.
Grazie Preside Giombi, grazie mille. And I'll go back to English for our teachers that are with us today. I wanted to welcome all of you, all the teachers who are here. I know that you are so many, and that many of you are from several different regions from Italy. So I'm very happy to welcome all of you today, this afternoon. This afternoon is the second webinar of this series, which is the sixth series of Think Outside the Box, which is an initiative we started 6 years ago, and it's organized by Liceo Onofre Polloni of Fano, together in collaboration with the Mediateca Montanari of Fano and Fano municipality. And this year with Macmillan Education and Mondadori Education and Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. We've had several collaborations during these years, all of them very, very important to us, and thanks to which we could organize different seminars, all of them very, very interesting for us teachers. Now, let me tell you a couple of things which are interesting, I think, for all of you, is that this initiative is under the patronage of Fano municipality, and this is an important recognition of this project. And the whole course this year is composed of 3 webinars. The first one was on the 2nd of March, the one today, and the last one, which is on the 20th of April, okay, which I will talk about later. Just a couple of things I wanted to tell you very briefly is that if you haven't, those of you who are full teachers, permanent teachers, and in case you haven't done it yet, it's possible to register on Sophia portal up to this evening. Okay, so up to this evening, it is possible to register on Sophia so that you can have the final certificate at the end from Sophia platform, which is the official portal of the Ministry of Education for the teachers development courses, basically. The identification code for I Think Outside the Box is 80936. Okay, but you'll find it written anywhere in all the documents, the invitations and the various letters that have been sent to you. But I will also add it in the chat in a moment. So you can do it up to this evening. In any case, all of you will receive a certificate a certificate at the end, not after this webinar, but at the end of all the webinars. So after the conclusion of the whole course, okay? Either it will be, you can download it on from Sophia portal, or if you've filled in the Google form and you didn't register on Sophia, you will receive it via email, okay? So you will get it, but it will be a certificate for the whole course, okay? With the hours you have attended. Now, let me move on to a couple of other things which are very, very important. As the headmaster mentioned, there are several collaborations which have been very important to us, and I would like to thank in particular Macmillan Education and Mondadori Education. And for Macmillan, we've got today Romina Pifferi, who is the representative for Italy, and I'm going to pass on to her in a moment, but I want to thank her for this collaboration, which has been so interesting, so important, so useful, and so fruitful, I would say. And I'm sure we're going to move on together in the future with other important, interesting webinars for all of us. And I want also to thank, speaking of Macmillan Education, I want also to thank Marco Camilletti, who is with us this afternoon, who is the representative for the Marche region for both Macmillan Education and Mondadori Education. Thank you, Marco, for being with us this afternoon. And before thanking also Laura Broadbent, okay, which I will be doing later on, okay, I will pass on to Romina for her welcome. Thank you, Romina.
Thank you, Valentina, and welcome everybody. I'm Romina, I work for Macmillan Education, and this year is actually almost my 4th year here for Macmillan. I started during COVID, so not the perfect period, but that's I'm really happy to have had this kind of experience as well, because Macmillan Education in that period really developed the digital side of education and of the books themselves. And that's what you are going to talk about today as well, because technology is always part of what the school are asked for, especially now that there's also the PNRR project in Italian state schools. As for, obviously, I would like to thank Valentina and Marco for this opportunity. We are always happy to sponsor this kind of events because it started 6 years ago. I wasn't there in the first edition, I'm sorry, but I've been told it was a great experience, and so and actually I've noticed in the following editions as well. So I'm really happy to be part of this project, and I don't want to steal your time because you are here to listen to Laura today, but I just would like to say that if you have any questions about the books and the titles that Laura will be mentioning during the presentation, you can always contact Marco if you are in Le Marche region, or for the other teachers that are online with us today, me directly, and I will address you to the agent of reference. So I don't know if you already have my email address, but I will make sure that by the end of the session I will give you my contacts as well, so that you'll have everything. Thank you very much again, and enjoy the webinar. And Valentina, over to you.
Thank you, Romina. Thank you very much. Now, let me just remind you 2 dates so that you can, write them down in your diary in your agenda, which is the 20th of April for next, the third webinar and last webinar. And also for those of you who are in the Marche region, write down also the 21st of March, okay, because there will be something in presence, okay, at Mediateca Montanari. But I will tell you about both meetings after Laura's talk, okay. Now let me just introduce Laura. Laura is an ELT writer, teacher trainer, and consultant. She has a long experience in English teaching. Okay, she taught in Malaysia, Brazil, Italy, France for several years. She translated ELT course books. She has written a wide range of ELT materials and student books, resources, and so she has got really a wide experience in this field. And she is going to talk today about a very, I think it's a fascinating topic. We discussed about it with Romina as well, and we found out it was perfect for this afternoon. Because she's dealing with several hot topics. One is technology. As we all know, technology plays an important part in our teaching, our personal teaching experiences, and it has been even more so in the latest few years due to COVID. So the online things and activities have had most part of our time in teaching, but also gamification, so the possibility of using games in class, and this is something that to students' ears sounds very, very exciting. And then social and emotional learning, which are two important topics and headlines in the last. They've been important headlines in the last few years in English language teaching in Italy as well as abroad. So I think that Laura will will explain how to make all these elements, ingredients, how you can use all these ingredients to make a wonderful cake, I guess, so to speak. And we are curious to learn from her in the next hour and a half together. Thank you, Laura. We're waiting for your talk, and just one thing for everybody, please feel free to write your questions in the chat, because we will ask Laura all your questions after her talk. Okay, thank you very much, Laura, and I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Lovely to vaguely meet all of you, and thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here. I'm really excited to be talking to what I hear is a wide range of different ELT people in the audience. So I think this is going to make a really interesting talk now, and also discussion afterwards. So I really look forward to that. As Valentina said, we'll be doing lots of questions afterwards. So please bring your questions forwards during the talk. That'll be really good. I think that's it. I'm going to start sharing my screen now, and then we will double check that everyone can see. Okay, fantastic. Is everyone with me?
Yes.
That's lovely. So yes, as mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how to mix together technology, gamification, and social and emotional learning, which sounds like a lot to do and a lot to fit into what I imagine is already a busy curriculum. So we'll go through it step by step. And so first of all, just the outline. We'll first take a look at gamification on its own in isolation. Then we will go on to social and emotional learning. I should say that with the social and emotional learning aspect, I will be drawing on my experience, one as an ELT teacher, 2 as a educational special needs consultant, and 3 as a speech and language therapist. So I will be bringing all of those to the board. So hopefully that'll give you some kind of different angles to look at things for your classes. Then we'll look at the different technologies, 1 that you're using already and 2 that you could be using. And then in number 4, which is effectively the main part of the webinar, we'll be looking at examples and activity types that can take all of those 3 and essentially plait them together as you might do a big piece of hair. So we'll not, and yes, as I say, there will be a couple of questions. And in fact, we are actually going to start off with a question. So I'm going to ask you a question, and please put your answers in the chat. And then I'll give you, a 1 minute or a bit less for you to respond. So what is gamification? For you, can you define in 1 sentence only what is gamification? I'm just going to sit in silence for a sec and let you answer. And then we'll read through some answers. It can also just be 1 or 2 words. You don't need to write a whole sentence. Sorry, that was a bit of a lot to do right at the beginning. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Monica. So the motivation for students to learn, let's hope so, hey? Absolutely. Brilliant. Using games to learn. Yes. Fantastic. Teaching using games. Brilliant. Well, thank you. Using games for revising. Nice. Good. Learning and playing together. Nice. I like the word together there. Learning, having fun. Absolutely. I'll just give you another 10 seconds or so, see if there are any more. New technology is learning. Oh, yes, yeah, brilliant. Learning, enjoying it. Yes, games for learning, brilliant. Game plus testing, nice. Using games in other areas of activities, very nice. Brilliant, Stefania. And using games for teaching activities, fantastic. Okay, oh, thanks. I like the emoji, thank you. Using games to teach something, yes. I like that you've said something as well, because it's not always just vocabulary and grammar. Playing by doing, brilliant. Kinesthetic learning is always really effective. Learning in a different and motivating way, absolutely. Using games, yes, and making learning. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, they're coming through now. Playing by learning and doing, yes, yes. Using games and mind maps, brilliant. Mind maps will be coming up. Thank you for that. Learning and playing, yes, and learning by gaming, nice. I like that. That's slightly different, and I really like that. Thank you, Serena. That's brilliant. Okay, so if you do have any more suggestions, just you can drop them in at the end when we go through questions. So first of all, we will take a look at one definition. So obviously this is slightly longer than a sentence. So it's not simply using games. It's the idea of increasing learners' engagement, creating interactive learning contexts, and achieving learning autonomy. Therefore, it's using badges, rewards, cumulative scores, competitive scores, because they are incentives for students and expected behaviours. So essentially a way of creating rules. So I have put this down to one sentence, is the application of game playing elements to another type of activity with learning objectives. So the key thing here, it's not just a game to fill in the time. You know, sometimes you have the last lesson of the term and you say, let's all do a quiz. You know, our minds are already turned off. We're already looking at the beach or on our next holiday. So let's just kill some time. This is quite different. So this is having a specific learning objective, and that is the guiding idea for each game. Okay, so it's not quite as frivolous as students might like to think. Okay, so we've got three main concepts that bring in gamification. So it's dynamics, which one of you said it's playing together, so fantastic. Game mechanics, and then components or elements. They are called different people call them different things, but they're exactly the same thing. So let's take a look at game dynamics first. So this is the feeling the student has of its status. It's, you know, where is my position in the classroom or in the school, or it's how I feel when I leave the classroom, maybe in the playground or elsewhere. A sense of reward. So I've learned something, I've completed a task, and now I've got a sense of reward by doing a game. Self-expression. Many games are open to creativity, and they give students an opportunity to express themselves in a way they want to, which is sometimes really key in motivating lots of different ages. Competition under rules. So as the quote there says, rules are important. We all know rules are an important part of the classroom and of every aspect of life for us all to work along well together. It's also bringing in achievement. So the idea that, yes, you know, it kind of coincides with the idea of reward. I've achieved something. It's that lovely feeling of being productive in a class or a lesson, and you've achieved something by the end of it. And others. You are usually playing with other people. And this is where it links beautifully with our social and emotional learning, that we will generally be playing games together, whether it be with one person, a group of people, a whole class, or classes around the world as well, which we will look at later. Mechanics. So mechanics are essentially the building blocks of a game. So it could be a level system. So, you know, if you're used to playing any types of games that aren't necessarily educational, you get to level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So it's that idea of moving up the ladder. And you could have a narrative context. So there's a story behind the game. This draws people or players into a world, and it will really engage them, and it allows their brain to kind of relax, forget they're in an educational learning environment, and really bring in, it'll allow them to produce the language that they maybe aren't aware that they know and they're able to produce. So it really opens the gates there to the knowledge that students already have. Then we have the idea of challenge, which as teachers, you know that students you're always trying to create the next manageable challenge for our students. So this is another way to do that and put it into a structure. Again, achievement. So we've got that word achievements again, and it's, you know, what have I achieved? Have I achieved, you know, a point? Have I achieved first place? Have I achieved just completing it? Have I moved on into a different room or a different zone? So these are different achievements. And leaderboards. Some teachers, I imagine, like leaderboards, and some don't like leaderboards. I think both are valid. So obviously you can have a leaderboard that's only visible during the game, or you can have a leaderboard that's up on the classroom wall or the virtual classroom as well, so that the students can see where they're coming. On the other hand, some teachers may consider this to be too much pressure and creating too much competitiveness that's not very healthy. It really depends on your class dynamics. It really depends on your students. So as a teacher, it's really your decision to know if that's going to suit your students or not. And then we've got the components or elements. So these are self-representations with avatars. So, you know, even when you're using your social media, you'll generally have a little profile picture that's not necessarily a photo, it's an avatar. I think with popular messaging systems, you'll be used to having those. It's also having feedback. Feedback is a fundamental part, because as reflection is a vital part of the learning process, feedback is the same. So gaming is allowing the students to reflect and feedback on their abilities, their skills, their achievements, and things to work on next time. Then we have points, trophies, badges, and a progress bar, which are just elements of being able to watch the level going up and down. So that's gamification in a nutshell. So now, when I mentioned that we have to be using goals, you must have a goal that governs your game. So there are 3 types of goals we're going to look at. We have an instructional goal, essentially complete this task. So as a teacher, you might say, read the text, answer the questions. Obviously, that's not a game, but it's just a goal that you will be given most classes. Complete the quiz, or carry out the quiz with your peers, or write the quiz questions. So all of these are just completing a task, which students need to be very, very used to, because when it comes to exams and work situations, they need to just be able to complete something and nothing else. Then we have a specific learning goal. This, for example, might be to understand a text, learn vocabulary items, or, for example, talk about the future using the present continuous. So these will be the learning goals, whether it be skill, reading, writing, listening, speaking, or whether it be based on vocabulary or a grammatical point as well. Of course, as we will come on to, there may also be other goals, such as social emotional learning. Which brings us nicely on to the behavioral goal. So as we mentioned before, gamification must have rules. And then when we know that students and teachers all abide by rules together, this will promote positive behavior. It promotes respect amongst our students and awareness of other cultures. So we will look at these further with the examples as we go along. So let's move on to, I just want to show you some little or simple examples that are not using technology of competition that we can use. Now, one thing to keep in mind, try to keep the competition friendly. Now, this can be helped by the way you set up a game. The idea of having a game that is listening to others and working together, rather than one person just trying to be the fastest or trying to get the most of something and beating everyone else and just putting their hands up or saying, I finished, and kind of ignoring everyone else. So this is what we need to avoid. And there are things we can put into place to stop that happening. Also, changing teams around. We don't always want the same students working with the same students. It may be the case that some of your students always sit together. It may be the case that you already move your students around in your class. When it comes to a game, it's really, really important that the teams are constantly changing. And the reason for this is not only for variety, it's really important for students to see the strengths in other students. And if a student isn't necessarily good friends with another student, then, or let's say student A and student B don't know each other very well. They may only base their acquaintance on the way the other student behaves in class. Do they answer lots of questions? Do they finish their work first? So they may have based their idea, student A might base their perspective of student B just on that. However, if they work together, particularly with games or projects, they will learn what the student B is able to do and their strengths. And it's generally that our students always have different strengths. So it's really important to understand that, for the student to understand that, okay, my strength is speaking. I feel very confident, I speak quite fluently, and my pronunciation is quite good. However, when it comes to solving problems, I really struggle. Now, it might be hard for some students to realize this. And until they're working with someone else and using the skills together, that's when they'll realize this. So it's really, really useful to have that, and also helps create this positive environment. So an example is whiteboard races. So these can be, whether it's back to the board, and when I say whiteboard races, they the back to the board can also be done online. So it's essentially, imagine behind me is the board and I'm a student. You can have this done in teams. So obviously I can have other students with their other teams, and there may be something written on the board behind me, and my team needs to try and make me say either the word, phrase, or sentence that is on the board. What's on the board could be a picture or it could be written. So this is essentially working together to try and, for me to say the word before anyone else on the team. There's also pass the message. I will go into that one a little bit more detail in a sec, but it's essentially a team of players who are standing in a line and passing the message on by whispering. Difficult to make some of them whisper anyways. This is another good rule. And then seeing what the message at the end comes out. Again, I'll give a couple of examples of different options for this. So also teacher versus student. Now, this is really, really good for behavioral goals. So this could be, for example, you can set a rule that everyone must stop speaking when the teacher either asks everyone to be quiet, or if it's an online class, they could, when the teacher raises their hand for quiet to happen, everyone has 3 seconds to be quiet. If all the students are quiet within 3 seconds, they receive a point. If they are not, the teacher receives a point. And this can go on for the class, or it can go on for the whole course. This could go on for a week, month, or a whole term. And it really helps the students work together. And it's a really useful way of implementing rules, particularly when it comes to gamification, because games can get fun and they can get quite loud. So it's really, really key to have these rules to bring students back down and remember that it's the teacher who is guiding the class. And then we have the digital apps in competition. Examples here. These are just a few examples. Again, we will be looking in more detail at other ones as we go along. So that's how to get the competition element to your gamification. Another thing you can do is adapting. So one part of gamification is it can take a while to prepare your games, to try and think of, set up a game, create the resources, whether it's face-to-face or online or virtually. It can take a lot of work for the teachers. So to just give you some ideas, you can also just use board games that you already have. Maybe you have board games in the classroom, or online, you will always be able to find simplified educational versions of games. So Scrabble, if you're familiar with this game, you have to make words with lots of little letters that you have. If you're teaching primary ages, primary children can make their little letters first. So that's helping them practice the pronunciation. If they're working in teams or pairs, I'm going to write A, I'm going to write B. So they can do that, or you can already use a Scrabble board if you have one. And online there will be Scrabble options as well. With a dictionary is really, really useful. So obviously you get more points for the more complicated the word. You can give it a theme. As today's webinar is looking at technology, I've chosen examples about technology. With technology as the theme. So let's say you give them a theme of technology. So they're trying to think of technology words with Scrabble. Monopoly as well. As we know, Monopoly could take absolutely hours to play. So there are simplified versions online for you. Marmalade is just one example of quite a modern digital game version of Monopoly that you can use. Other ones, bingo. Again, if you're working with primary students, you can make the bingo cards, flashcards essentially. Secondary, you could also make flashcards as well, or you could pre-prepare flashcards to make to play bingo with vocabulary. Taboo is another one. I don't know if you are familiar with the game Taboo. It's essentially, if you'll see on this slide here, where it's got the light green card, which says charge, and then number 1, battery, number 2, phone, number 3, laptop. So students will write down a word that they wish their team or the other team to say. Again, you can give them, for example, technology theme, particularly if they've come up in your class already. And then they will write down that word at the top of the card. So in this case, it's charge. And then either them or before telling them what's happening, they pass it on to the next partner. They are going to write 3 words they associate with charge. In this case, I've just said these 3. And it's a good idea to do this before telling them the rules of the game, because then afterwards, they need to try and have either their team or the other team say the word at the top, charge. You have to describe that word, but you cannot use any of the number 1, 2, 3 words. So of course, if you tell them that at the beginning, they're not going to use right words that they would normally use. They'll make it easy for themselves. So tell them that afterwards. And again, it's just a game with the learning objective of practicing the vocabulary and also the skill of making yourself understood when you don't know a specific vocabulary item. Pictionary is very similar. Again, working in teams, really, really key to practice our elements of social emotional learning that we'll get on to. And Just a Minute is, if any of you listen to the radio in England, there is a program called Just a Minute, where you are given a topic and one player has to speak on that topic for 1 minute. However, they are not allowed to repeat any words. You might be able to, if you want, you can let them repeat grammatical words, but not, for example, nouns or places or people. No repetition, no hesitation. Again, you can make this easier or more difficult by saying you can hesitate for a second, but no longer. And no deviation, which means you must keep talking about the topic. This, in my experience, is extremely popular with students, and the class can get quite loud. This again works easily online or in your classroom. And again, it's learning those fluency speaking skills as well as vocabulary. And then, of course, snap with your own flashcards. So whether you've got your own flashcards, which you can generate online, or whether your students are making their own flashcards and then playing snap, where they put them down on a pile together and say snap when 2 cards that are exactly the same come down. So they're just some very simple gamification ideas that require absolutely no technology for you. Okay, social emotional learning. So this comes under 5 big categories. So this is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationships, and decision-making. Now, self-awareness, this is really about understanding ourselves, is understanding our own strengths and weaknesses, areas that we can practice and improve, recognizing our own emotions, which is really, really interesting because that often comes out in games. Lots of people don't like losing. So this is very, very interesting to find out. And it's also about future aspirations. What do you want to do in the future? Why do you want to do it? And how are you aiming to do it? Then we have self-management, again, as I touched on before, that the self-management, again, learning how to play well with others, whether it's in a more larger team and maybe under a stressful situation. For example, if you're racing to do something, how do you manage yourself? Do you suddenly become the leader and tell everyone what to do? Do you suddenly become very quiet and just watch what's happening? Do you become angry? Do you become excited? And if you win, how do you behave and feel? And if you lose, likewise, how do you behave and feel? This, even as adults, is always very interesting to see. So therefore, it's taking responsibility for your behaviors because they will be affecting everyone else as well as the things that happen to you. So it's developing positive study habits. So this may be something like, if I've got an exam on Friday, I'm not going to only revise all Thursday and all Thursday night. This is not a healthy study habit. Ideally, I will have started revising at least 2 or 3 weeks ago and maybe revising 15, 30 minutes every day. So it's managing my time as well as my emotions. And this will help me also help others and be helped by others. Also, perseverance. If something is difficult, try and keep trying. So gamification is really useful because, as we touched on earlier, the idea of achievement and rewards, this helps build the perseverance, especially if you have a game mechanic, for example, is leveling, going 1, 2, 3, 4. This again is building up the perseverance in order to complete tasks. Okay, and then we have social awareness. So this is understanding social expectations. How should I behave when I'm, for example, speaking to you in this webinar? Can I start speaking slang English? Can I start looking around? Can I turn around and face the wall? Can I walk away into the kitchen and carry on speaking to you while I'm making a cup of tea? I would say no. How do I know this? Because I've learned the expectations. And likewise, for every other social situation we are in, there are expectations. Interestingly, these will change where we are, which country we're in, which cultures we're with, often which language we're speaking. And this can be something quite hard to govern. So, for example, English is often quite a polite language when people are learning it. And if students are coming from a language that's more direct, this transition needs to be learned. There is no, it's not a natural knowledge. So these kind of awareness things will come in with our social awareness. Also, perspective, looking at other perspectives. I might think that spring is the best time of year, but you guys might think that summer or winter is. Obviously, winter in England, where I am, is terrible. So it's difficult for me to say that. But perhaps in Italy, your winters are much nicer. So our perspectives are different. So therefore, it's building the empathy to understand other people and understand why we may have different opinions, and that's fine. So celebrating our differences. Okay, student B is really extrovert, really good at talking to people. I may be an introvert. I struggle to talk to people, but I love reading and I love stories. So as it's really important to build this awareness, which, as I mentioned, we can do this through games to see the teams working together. Relationships, communicating with each other, developing healthy relationships. Do I want to spend time with people who afterwards make me feel really negative and rubbish? Possibly not. How can I do that without feeling an obligation to be with these people for whatever reason? Likewise, when people that you're going to be working with in the future. So this is really useful thing to learn, and during playing games, this comes out again. Projects as well, this is very useful. Also, resolving problems. There will always be conflicts when working with other people. As we know in our daily lives, there are conflicts. How can I try and resolve this? Rather than screaming and shouting my perspective and expecting everyone to follow what I want, extreme example, how can I, by using my empathy to understand what the other person wants, how can I suggest a medium ground where we can compromise and meet? This may be really key when playing games, as we will look at in examples. And then finally, decision making. We are doing this constantly. We're doing it day by day. Sometimes when our brain gets stuck and we feel under pressure, shy, not very confident, intimidated, these feelings will stop us being able to make decisions effectively. Either our mind will go completely blank, or we will say something, make a decision without thinking it through properly. So how can we help ourselves to calm down, evaluate the different sides or the different options, and then choose healthy ideas and habits that work? Now, this again is all very personal. So something that works for me may not work for you. Okay, so when we're looking at social and emotional learning as a teacher, you want to be building assertiveness and trust, a sense of identity in your students, which will be different with different age groups, particularly during secondary school. Students will be sorting out their identity, and you know, they may not be very comfortable. So it's that active listening rather than just looking around, looking out the window and just looking at the teacher when they say my name. Complimenting and how to take compliments, apologizing, which is really, really key. And as I mentioned before, empathy. So I just wanted to give you a little break from listening to me. Do you have any other suggestions for social and emotional learning, what things you could practice in your class, whether it's in games, projects, collaborative work, that will help with the social emotional categories that we have on the left? So I'm just going to give you 1 minute, again as before, type them into the chat box, and I look forward to seeing your answers. I'm just making the screen small so I can check the time, sorry. While I'm waiting, I'm just going to get my clock, and then I won't have to make my screen smaller. Oh, nice. Thank you. So the first answer we've got is a sense of stillness. I absolutely agree with you. Fantastic suggestion. Thank you. Benedetto, I really like the idea of the sense of stillness as well, because it often allows for us to be able to do all of these other things. If we're racing about, whether physically or mentally, it's very hard to have space in our minds to do any of these other things. So I think that's such a really great suggestion. Roberta, defer judgment. Fantastic. One of the things I will be mentioning later is avoiding judgment. Brilliant. It's very easy for us to judge, and it's actually probably harder to not judge, yet it's something I remember when I was kind of learning to, well, first when I realized how much I did judge, and then becoming aware of it, and then when I would often go to make a judgment, even in my mind, to catch myself doing it, and then think, well, wait a minute, Laura, you might think, this class is really long, but what actually is it? Just because it's packed full of information? Is it because you're tired? So many things like that. It's really useful to ask your students that as well. So that's brilliant. Frustration, fantastic. I absolutely agree, especially with gamification. Frustration that you maybe feel like you're not performing as well as either you should be or as well as others. Frustration that you're not understanding a language concept. And so, yes, fantastic suggestion. Thank you. Manage pressure. Whew, big one. Yes. I think managing pressure is so important. To be able to, such an important life skill. Again, with these social and emotional learning skills, they are all huge life skills for us. Inclusion, absolutely inclusion, brilliant. This is in line with the self-awareness, seeing how you think and behave towards others, and also your social awareness as well, and your self-management. You know, if someone looks a little bit lost in the class, welcome them to your group, welcome them. You know, everyone has something to bring to the table. So that sense of inclusion, absolutely brilliant suggestion. Acceptance as well. Acceptance is so important. To accept, as you say, that, you know, if you're not managing the pressure, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're not understanding something, if you're not working as fast as you want to be able to, accept it. As soon as you accept it, the stress goes from the brain and you actually improve. The idea that they can succeed. Yes, fantastic suggestion, Monica, because students can often feel like they won't. There will be many factors leading to this. But the idea that, you know, oh, I'm just not going to pass my exam at the end of this term, I give up. And, you know, we see it constantly. We have felt it ourselves. So how can we manage and make these incremental goals and targets is really, really good. Respect. Yes, respect is absolutely fundamental. Respect yourself and respect others. Brilliant. Awareness. Yes. Empathy. Fantastic. Coping with anxiety. Yes. These are fantastic ones. Brilliant. Kindness. As soon as it could be, I think it could be quite common for someone who is feeling quite insecure. One consequence of this can be defensiveness, and you know, you kind of close down to the people around you, you close down to the information coming in, and you will, you know, kind of almost, you know, your body will grow, your chest will grow out. Often you'll see someone actually leaning back, almost as if their body is defending them from what's coming, because they're not ready or they're not feeling confident. So being able to offer kindness, actually often, not only does it go out, so it breaks through that wall that, you know, it can be tempting to build sometimes, it also allows kindness to come back in. So by opening that pathway in and out, kindness is a really, really effective way of doing this. And obviously it doesn't need to be extreme or exaggerated. You know, let's say you're working with a pair and they do something, you say, that was a great idea. You know, I didn't think of that. Brilliant. Working together towards a shared goal, fantastic. Being proud of yourself, yes, these are brilliant. And emotional trust, woo, emotional trust can be very difficult, particularly in a different language. And so these are all fantastic ideas. Thank you very much. I'm going to, oh yes, positivity and bonding, absolutely. These are brilliant suggestions. Thank you. Again, like before, if you have more, bring them into the conversation at the end. Okay, so thank you very much. Let's move on. So these are just suggestions that when I was teaching in Brighton here, and Italian teenagers, so they were secondary school, a range of secondary ages, came over for several months to do an immersion course. So we were being inspected on, I think it was once or over 2 days by educational inspectors in the UK. And they came, and fortunately it went well. And the feedback I received was that it was a male who was the inspector in this case, and he said he had never seen students, particularly teenage students, so engaged in what they were doing in a class. So obviously this was great, and obviously it was, you know, it was quite loud, it was really fun. So I thought I'd just share these ideas with you. Again, these are not using technology yet, but they are really good at mixing together this, I'll now say SEL learning, which is social and emotional learning. They're really good at mixing these together with gamification, adding on the learning objective. Okay, so these are just some simple ideas first, just to get your mind warmed up to the idea. So as I mentioned before, whispering the message competition. So you can have 2 teams, for example. In this case, it was 2 teams of a class of about, I think there were about 12, 15 students in each team. So they would make a long line. One end would be finishing at the board, the other end at the other end of the classroom. Now, the students at the end of the classroom, away from the board, had a piece of paper and wrote down a word or a phrase or a sentence. Obviously, it gets much more exciting when it's a sentence because it's more difficult. Wrote it down on a piece of paper. Now, it had to be in line with the theme. So let's say, for example, today, technology. So then I checked the sentence first to check it's grammatically correct and the spelling. So each group has a different, they would have the same word. So they would take it in turns to think of one word that both teams had to pass along. Okay, and then the next person in each team would read that sentence. Then they whisper it to going along the chain. Now, this is where it's really important to set rules, because I tried it the first time and no one whispered. They all just spoke like this. They put their hand there and spoke normally. So I set a rule, again, this idea of the teacher to student rule, but I did it team against team. If one person did not whisper, then a point would go to the other team, and they would also lose a point. So then there'd be 2 points down. So I installed this rule, which, as you can imagine, made the frustration come out, which was very interesting, because some students would happily whisper, some others wouldn't. The rest of the team would get really frustrated because they just lost 2 points. And then at the end, the last person needs to write the sentence on the board. The group all together need to look once it's finished and agree together that the sentence is correct. Only when they all agree and their spokesperson says, yes, Laura, we're finished, will I look at it and consider it completed. So therefore, we're bringing the whole group together to trust each other's judgment, to look at it on the board, and to be part of, because it could be very common that the first students who whispered, as it goes down the line, they start to get a little bit distracted and look elsewhere, or look at the other, or start talking amongst themselves. So by bringing it back into that joint decision at the end, brings the whole group together. So they really liked that. Another one they really liked was the story writing. So they all sat in a circle. So again, I did 2 separate circles, so the group wasn't too big. And they would write one sentence. So I would give a cue, generally a question. So example here, this examples, they were about travel, holidays. So I said, where did you go? Now I encourage them to write crazy answers. Okay, not just like, I went to wherever I always go. So Pluto was a great answer. So they write one sentence, fold the piece of paper over and pass it on. And then each time I ask a different question. Who did you go with? Went with an alligator. How did you get there? Magic carpet. How long did it take? 1,000,000 years. So as you can see, it's taking, they have to first understand my question. They have to write full answers. Obviously, they cannot write just 1 or 2 words, because then it won't create the whole story. Then when they get to the end, open it out, and each person who opens it out reads everyone's story out. Now, this reading out is really important, because every student gets excited when they know their part is coming. So that's really, really important. It's also great for people, if they're listening and they know they wrote it, they will tell the person if they've read it correctly or not, because they're actively listening. So it draws in that skill of listening to the other person. Was that what I wrote? Okay, yes, it was. If it wasn't, did I write it incorrectly? or are they saying incorrectly? Again, the idea of self-reflection, but the idea that it's a group story again brings everyone together at the end, and hopefully they're all laughing together at the end. So the next one, teams raced to read a sentence from 8. So this was a kind of a version of 1, but I wanted to bring in more writing and reading into it. So the teams were just 4 people, I think, per team. And you'd have one, let's say, player A, again, sat down away from the board, sat down with a little table. So they each enjoyed it because they had their own desk and their own piece of paper. And then they would write down a sentence, then they pass it to the next team member who's there. That team member has to then read it out to their next team member, and that last team member needs to write it down. So again, you've kind of just got a little bit of different dynamics. Again, it's really nice to, you know, obviously dynamic in game 1 was a massive team altogether. The dynamics in 2 are fewer people and they're using different skills. So again, the students will be learning about different skills for each other and their strengths. Then the last one was, this is just a classic active listening activity where you listen to a partner and write down exactly what they heard. However, I put music on in the background. Again, this can happen. This is a really good one that's online, digitally, or face-to-face. So it's difficult listening to people, and it's difficult listening to people when there's noise going on, and that's very, very common, whether that may be in a work situation, in a social situation, or even at home. So I would put on music. Now, to make it more engaging, you can have students choose the music. You can give them a choice and they can choose it. Then they feel like they've taken responsibility for a setup of the game. And then one student A will read something out. Again, this could be something they've written themselves, or it could be a text, a paragraph of a text they're working with. And then student B writes down exactly what they hear. Music comes off. Student B reads out what they heard, what they wrote to student A. So it's that active listening going either way. Or student B is just listening to student A and only listening, no writing, again, with music on if you wish. And then afterwards, music off, and student B will tell A what they heard. In paraphrasing is really, really useful. Again, this active listening is really, really key for our SEL learning, okay, and for games as well. So again, just more examples of the low tech games before we get all digital. This would be no or low tech. And again, you know, sometimes the internet's not working. Sometimes something's run out of battery. So it's good to have these prepared just in case. Because you're beautifully, you know, your connection with another class on the other side of the world is a brilliant, fantastic idea. If it doesn't happen, always good to have backup. So now I should say that these examples now that you're going to see, I've taken them all from the B2 level of Gateway to the World series, okay? And these are all from one unit, technology unit. So just so you know, they're all coming from the same place. Now, these are the teachers, examples of the teachers' resources. So here you can see on the right, we've got the inverted crossword. So students are working together in pairs, and they complete the second sentence in each clue. So it has similarity in the first sentence. You may recognize this as a big part of the first, the Cambridge exams, the use of English. So that's one, practicing those exam skills. And then they are using the words to create the crossword. This is, again, simple game, crosswords, practicing your vocabulary. This could be done together. It could be done individually. It could be done as a team. You can set it up so it's the first team to finish. Or you could set it up as a time, and they just need to get it within a time, and then they play it again another day with different words and try and beat their own time. So it's always good to add in the element of competition with oneself, not always with someone else, okay? Because that can help. Some students will thrive on competing with others, some students will not. So it's really nice, if you can, to have opportunities for both personalities to come out. Then on the left, we've got an example of running dictation. So exactly the dictation I mentioned the last activity before, writing down exactly what you're hearing. This active listening is this SEL skill that's really, really important. These sentences can be sentences that students write themselves. It could be ones they hear from a video. It could be ones they hear from a peer or a classmate. So the sentence input can come from many different places. And then again, they win points for if all the words are spelt correctly. They win another point if the grammar is all in the same, in the correct place. So they can add points. So the point system is the one that's working here in the game mechanics. And then we've got invention or no invention. So again, working with partners. So this is complete the text. Now, this, you may think, well, this is a typical fill the gap exercise. So how can we gamify it? Okay, so again, one option is to, you can, as a teacher, you can, if you do have either little whiteboards for everyone, or of course, pieces of paper, or if you're working online, easy, the students can just type, or you can make it harder by making them having to write it with their hand. That's always fun. And so you will write or project or show the base, let's say, for example, here, number one text. So the base number one text. If you want, you can take out more words. Now, it's a race for each team. So you want people to be working together, and it's a race for them to type, or draw the correct words for the gaps. And they must confer. So they are not allowed to show you anything that's correct if you haven't seen them agree on it together first. So it must be an agreed decision so that one student doesn't fall back or one student steps forward. And then it's the first team to hold up, or they can raise their hand if it's online. We finished, and it's the race to give the correct answers. So it's, again, a very versatile way to gamify something. Here's another, I chose this because I really like the picture. Here's another example from the unit. So this is looking at a headline. Okay, it's also practicing a different skill of speaking. Look at the headline and a photo of a person from a news story. Write 6 indirect questions. Okay, so banana man chases and catches shoplifter. So we could use the just a minute game here, and students have 1 minute to ask 6 questions that must be, or in fact, as many questions as they can, that must be grammatically correct. Okay, they have 6 minutes to do it, but it could be that then student B must write them all down. So that's, and which team comes up with the most questions, only if they're grammatically correct. So it's another way of quickly gamifying a task for you. So these are just your backup options for your games. So I realize we've got a long way to go, so I will speed things up a bit. So technology, ideas of different technology here. We've got online textbooks, publisher platforms. So these, if you're using a course, you will be able to or have access to the platform and all the resources, which include the management systems. So setting up classes, giving homework, giving feedback, seeing progress grades automatically coming in. Video platforms, learning websites and learning apps, podcasts, smartphones, virtual reality, which we might not see in many classrooms, but possibly in the future. Now, AI is something that may be, that you may be not aware of how much it's already in technology. If your platform that you're using is feeding back information of your student results, that's already AI being involved in there. Okay, so we can have asynchronous and synchronous. So this could be one where they need you as a teacher with them, or the things they can be doing independently. Adaptive tests and games as well. You might, the first one that may come to mind, for example, something like Duolingo. You answer a question, And if it's correct, the next one will be harder. If it's incorrect, the next one may be easier. Okay, so that's just the idea of the different technologies that are generally useful for most places now. Just, oh, sorry, go back. So benefits, which you may agree or disagree with, which is something we can talk about afterwards. It allows students to progress at different paces. So particularly if this is independent learning, it does allow for that different pace, which is key. You know, just because a student works slower does not mean they have less information or less knowledge. So the fact that you can digitally track the progress, the strengths, the weaknesses, and using that, so that information that the AI is giving you, and you use that to plan lessons and activity based on things that your students need to work on. Provides practice opportunities. We are going to see a few of those now. Presents real life scenarios. Again, we're going to see those now. And introduces challenging new concepts. So rather than just using pen and paper, it's, you know, other concepts and ideas again, and, you know, harnesses what they already know and use. This is what teenagers, or all ages, are using to absorb their information outside of the classroom. So it's really good to meet them in the middle and use what they're used to using. So how can you gamify your classroom? This could be a virtual classroom. This could be on a platform, and this could be in person. So these work for all of them. Setting these regular class friendly competitions. So the competitions could be how many words, you know, have you learnt? And having these leaderboards or prizes that are available, whether this be on the wall, whether this be shared at the end of a virtual class that you can send out to your students. And these scoreboards and points, again, if you think is appropriate for your students, can be very incentivizing for them. Challenge your students. Again, we need that element of challenge using the smarts. So if anything is unattainable, your students won't be trying it. So as long as it's, you know, specific, I'm going to learn 10 words to do with technology vocabulary by next Friday. It's measurable. Is it attainable? So allow your students also to feed back to you. This is too difficult. This is too many words. I can't do it. Realistic, again, ask me to learn 10 words by 5 o'clock. No, it's not going to happen. And so, you know, being realistic with time as well. These are really, really key things. And again, it's really good to have these reflection times with your students, between your students and between you and the students, to feedback whether these goals and aims are in line with these SMART targets. How can you give the awards? You can give and send badges online, awards as well, and certificates. All of these are possible in the virtual classroom as well as in face-to-face. And particularly with the virtual ones, you can download one, you can design one and reuse it. So it could be, you know, and particularly with younger students, this could be really, really exciting for them. Also, it's really nice when you give awards or prizes or badges of recognition. It could be really, really useful to do this for social, emotional aspects. For example, great communicator or excellent listener or brilliant team worker. So these, you know, excellent empathy. So these rewards are really, really good. I did an escape room recently. I don't know if you guys are familiar with escape rooms. So it's essentially they don't actually lock you. They lock you in a room and you've got puzzles and games that you need to solve before the hour is up to be able to walk out of the room. It's really, really fun, and you do it as a team. And at the end, they gave us stickers. Now, bearing in mind, I'm 35, and I did it with my mum and my husband, who's similar age to me. So, you know, we're not 6-year-old kids. And at the end, they gave us stickers that were commenting on the, the skills we showed, whether it was great communicating was one of them, and I'm very proud of it still. So it's still really, really effective, whatever age your student, to recognize that. Because when a person recognizes something in themselves, they'll be really proud and they'll be really happy and looking forward to doing this again. Also, it's really nice to see what your peers got. So that was, one of my reactions for the escape room was great. We were communicating. Were we all communicating well, or were there one or two people who were, communicating better? So your students will naturally do this. They'll be, oh, what award did you get? So, this is really, really good for sharing and highlighting and recognizing these. Make the progress visible. So because if it's visible, they will be encouraged to climb up level 1, 2, 3, to persevere through the different challenges. Okay, and then again, I will going to show you an app, your games with Kahoot, that are part of this course that we can use. So first of all, one really key element of gamification is using different media. Video, audio. I mean, this is a key part of the ELT classroom anyway. And so it's really, really useful as part of this, the SEL skills, and allowing and celebrating our differences is really important to then be able to present new language concepts in different ways so that everyone's able to access them. So, for example, here we've got flipped room options. Okay, so you can flip a classroom yourself, but there are videos available in this course which are essentially explanations in context of the theme and the topic of what the students are learning. So, for example, in this case, it's the change of the meaning with gerund or infinitive. So I stopped walking, I stopped to walk. And it's an explanation of this, one in the context of the topic, but also because this topic is based on the secondary school student, it's relevant to them. So they will be really, really keen to watch it. I'm not going to show you this video because there are a couple of other videos that I want to show you, and I'm aware of the time. So this is really, really key way of using video. And again, you can make a game through the video. So again, you could do the active listening. So student A listens to part of the video, and student B doesn't. They're maybe out of the room or elsewhere in the classroom. And then student A passes on to student B what they hear. And then student B will note that down, listen to the video and check it's correct. The student that says the most points, that remembers the most points, is the winner. So another way of gamifying. Oops. So I'm just going to, as I say, skip this video. Another example of videos here. These are videos, really, really great videos of teenagers. The course is for teenagers, so it's teenagers teaching them. So it's really key for our students to see themselves represented. So again, it's the authentic communication. So they are communicating together in the video, talking about a grammar point. Okay. So here the game idea. So at the, in different parts of this video, as you can see on the right, there are questions, and the blue, it doesn't appear until the students do the answer. So you can pause the video, and then again, it could be the race for the teams, either on the screen or as a board, to race to write the answer. But the answer will not be acceptable until 1, they have conferred together, and 2, it is grammatically perfect. So that stops them rushing to write it down really, really crazily. And they'll take care, because they won't get a point until they do that. Okay. Another thing we can really, really use is interactive tasks. So this is really particularly key as well when you've got your independent learning. How can we gamify independent learning? I'm, as a teacher, not there. And how can I set this up so the learning objective is there, the structure is clear, and the student achieves the goal? How can I do all of this while I'm not there? So the interactive activities are really, really key for this. They add responsibility for the student, so the social and emotional element of the responsibility. I'm going to complete this work. I'm going to practice it until I get it right. And then obviously the student, if this is done digitally, the results will be fed back to the system for you as a teacher to see. Then you can give the awards if you want, or give them the next level up that they can go to. So, you know, if they complete all of the activities necessary, they go up to level 2. And it's surprising how these small elements can make quite a big difference and be very effective. So this is just an example of the tech unit. So the example on the left is from the student's book, sample on the right is from the workbook. So you can see the interactive activities that the student is perfectly able to do on their own. Also, you can have students doing it if you have the resources in your classroom. The students can do this in teams. Students can also do it in teams whilst they're set up in a virtual classroom, which I will get on to. So, as I mentioned before, we've got our apps with games. So I had a go at this one. Fortunately, I got the answers right. So as you can see on the right is the screen on my phone. So this is what the student will see. And sorry, my phone's in Spanish, hence why it's not in English, so I apologize. And then the screenshots are what the teacher sees. So now this is really, really great because anyone around the world, they can take the pin that you create. So you can see in the top left screen, they've got the pin or the QR code. You pass that to the students who are going to take part. They don't need to sign up. They can just use the code to join the game. And they can do it again as teams. You can set it up as teams or you can set it up individually. Of course, I had to do it individually as I was playing on my own here. And you can set it up with puzzles. So as you can see, top right is a puzzle. So you have to put the phrases in the correct order. On the left, it's just, you know, the vocabulary testing. And then on the right is more of it showed a photo. So it's more of a knowledge, the content of the class knowledge. So by using Kahoot, also you could do timed. So how long does it take you to answer a question, or you've only got 10 seconds to answer the question. So it adds the element of competitiveness, tension. So actually it's very useful. If you can do this in a friendly way, it's a very good way of having students gently learning to deal with stress and the sense of urgency and also frustration. Because if they are, oh no, I got it wrong, but they need to overcome the feeling of frustration to be able to move on to the next question, which sounds small, but this can be, you know, big, particularly in exam situations, or let's say they're going to work situations. They answer a question not very well, or they don't know an answer to a question in an interview. Doesn't matter. They're slowly learned that they can carry on and overcome that and just concentrate on the question that's being asked them. It's also really good for students to be present. So they get able to sit still and concentrate only on this and nothing else, because you have to be able to do it fast and join in with everyone. So it's a really, really effective, engaging game that's really easy, and it's part of this course. All the tests are already set up. So in Kahoot, you can either have pre-set up games and quizzes like these ones are with this course, or you can create your own. So it's really, really effective, and it's one that you may be familiar with already. Also, again, with the independent learning, quizzes to revise grammar. Okay, so they've learnt their grammar from video, from the book, from the explanation from you, from the flipped classroom, and they are now revising it. Again, as you can see on the left, practice makes perfect. This is instilling the idea of perseverance it doesn't matter if you don't get it right the first time. In fact, you probably won't. Most of us don't manage to do anything right the first ever time we did it. When we were all tiny, we couldn't walk straight away or pick up a spoon. So, you know, it's really instilling this consistently throughout the students' learning. So you can do this yourself. You know, practice makes perfect. I expect you to make a mistake. I make mistakes. Model making mistakes. A really key thing is that as a teacher, we are not omniscient. We don't know everything, and we are human beings. We will receive questions from students we don't know that we will go and find out. And we will make mistakes. So giving the students that understanding that making mistakes is great. And that's how you'll move from level 1 to 2 to 3. And so you can give awards for students trying and making mistakes. It's really, really useful. So again, you can see these interactive games, which you can find online, but you can also create yourself, or you can have teams create them for other teams, whether digitally or in person. So when it comes to testing, whether it's a review, whether it's a test, or whether it's more, you know, kind of preparing you for exams, again, as a teacher, many students don't like tests. And so how can we instill the idea that tests are fine, no need to be worried or anxious about tests? One, doing them regularly, low stakes. By low stakes, I mean it really doesn't matter if they do well or not. It's just the action of doing the test. How else can we make a test better? Less anxiety instigating. We make it into a game. So you can have you can have a student reading out the test question to the whole class, and the whole class writes down their answers, or you can have different teams working. Again, the active listening style. You can have the student or teacher writes the question on the board, and teams race to say the answer, write the answer. It can be that you have to pass the piece of paper around. So make it into a game. So therefore, you know, this ability to answer questions and think and share becomes really very natural for students. Okay, so great learners, great thinkers. Do let me know if I realize I'm going over time, so do let me know if that's okay, or just interrupt me when you think I should stop. So I'm going to carry on until you tell me to stop. Great. So great learners and great thinkers. A massive part of our SEL learning is, as we said earlier, and as you guys said, empathy, perspective, understanding other people. The world is not all about us. And this can be a very difficult lesson for some of our younger students. So in this video, again, they come with every single unit. It's really, really useful to see these are all presented by a range of different people, some of them teenagers, some of them not. And this one, again, because it's from the technology unit, is related to social media. So it's in this video, the presenter makes a challenge. I'm going to do without social media for 2 days. So first of all, you know, make a game. Write down everything. Does she manage it? Does she not manage it? What's difficult? What's not difficult? Write down the answers. After watching the video, the person who got the most that did appear or were mentioned in the video wins. So it's this active listening and understanding other people. This is also really good. You can have students bringing in people that they, not bringing actually the person in, telling students about the people they know, so that they can share these different perspectives. And seeing these different perspectives is really, really you know, something they're doing regularly. Again, I'm just going to pass through active listening because we've touched on that quite a bit, and you've got the slides for afterwards. In the unit as well, so fantastic to have. Now, it's really interesting. In the unit, the great thinkers is in lilac. This is actually very, very useful because for a student, reflection time is often associated with lilac for lots of students in lots of countries, not all of them. So to see a lilac box, so therefore if you are creating your own materials, it's really useful to have reflection and thinking boxes and tasks in lilac because it allows the brain to relax and open up to thinking. And this actually, you know, is very calming method, and then helps to students break down that defensiveness and talking to each other. And also here is really great on the bottom left. Great learners can make reasoned use of new technologies, and they have to grade themselves 1 to 5. This is great. It's not a yes or a no. Am I good at this? Am I not good at this? How good am I at it? And then sharing this with your students. This is really, really effective way. And again, this could be a game. Guess what your partner or what your team, guess what they're going to give themselves, or likewise to you. And do I get it right? Do I not get it? Do I get it wrong? Or am I? So it's interesting because then you see what other people think of you and what you think of yourself, which is all helping to build our understanding between the students. Again, someone mentioned earlier mind maps. We all love mind maps. So having the mind maps coming up here, looking and answering the questions. Again, this can be done as a game with the active listening approach, or when I say active listening, one speaking, one listening, writing down. Again, you can also do it in the style of I have to speak and I keep speaking without repeating, hesitating or deviating for a minute. Okay, so these are other things that are possible to do. Now, I just want to fit this in before we go on to questions. The cultural exchange, so the virtual classroom. This is brilliant. So this is either something you can set up. Of course, this course has it done for you. And it's essentially a classroom that, so you can go into the community, you can look at different classrooms that are signed up as well. You can look at classrooms that are available at the same time that your class is available, and the same age group, and they're learning the same objectives as your class. So you can partner with this class and you can work together. Now, imagine how useful for our social and emotional learning this is. For me, as an Italian teenager, to be working and collaborating with another teenager in Japan. I am going to learn so much from that person, and I'm going to be able to share so much about myself. So you can set up collaborative tasks, and this project working is one of the best ways to elaborate and develop the social emotional learning skills. And so these collaborative projects are set up, so you can do this with your virtual classroom. So you can work together, you set your objective, you set your, because essentially a project is very similar to a game. You've got the very clear objectives, you've got the clear structure, and you've got the collaboration working together to achieve a shared goal, which is what one of you suggested, Monica suggested earlier in response to one of the questions. So it's really, really useful to have this working together in a virtual classroom that as a teacher, you don't need to plan because it's there for you. So if you can do that, as you can see on the left, these are the social and emotional skills that this is really, really going to help you to. And this is using technology, whether it's at home or whether it's at your school in your classroom. It can be scary if you are dealing with online classrooms as a teacher, knowing you are responsible for the safety of your students. So it's really, really useful whether directors, head teachers can make available resources like this, giving you tips on how to keep your students safe. Also with classroom management, virtual classroom management, as well as in-person classroom management. So it's really, really useful just to have these resources available. Every teacher knows they're available, so that this can be a barrier as teachers to prevent us from taking our class with us into the online digital world. So this is really, really useful to have, and they don't need to be complex. These are really, really useful resources just for you as a teacher, for your own self-confidence as you're meeting up with the classes anywhere. And many apps that we can use allow your students to do this. So if it's with your platform that your school is using, that's really useful, because then you know it's got the safety mechanisms in place. And then you can have teacher resources. These we can share with you in the slides. So they're just ideas for your students to learn the behavioral rules. So remember, one of our goals with gamification is behavior. So what can I do? What can't I do? How can I recognize if I can trust information or not trust information? So having these behavioral goals is really, really useful. So for students to be able to identify potential risks, potential, information that's not true, or it's not a fact, just to recognize it as an opinion as well. So as they're going into that, digital world, they're prepared. So being able to do, again, you can make these as games, easily make these as games, particularly with primary classes. They can make and draw and color these types of resources in, and then filling them in themselves. And then with your game management, when the games get really rowdy, as my Italian teenagers got really rowdy, how do you regain control? Once it's all gone and the students have used all of their English and they're having a great time and they're all beginning to shout and scream at each other, how do you bring it back down? Okay, so one behavioral goal you can say is, okay, can everyone hear me? If you can hear me, can you please be quiet? And obviously, one or two will hear you and then they'll go quiet, and it'll start spreading across the class. So if you speak quietly, it then means that they need to be quiet to be able to listen to you. So this is really, really useful. You can do this online. Hopefully that worked with you right now, but you can also do it in person. Again, you can, when you're using your online platforms, raise your hand. Traffic light system is really, really useful for primary ages. So you can make your screen go green, or you can make your screen go red if you're online, or you can obviously have your students make traffic lights that then you use in the classroom. And hand signals as well. Now these hand signals, is the example here is for students obviously to use. So if they're maybe not feeling confident to speak or type, or they're just unable to wherever they are, it's useful for them to be able to use hand signals. So it's great to agree on them as your class, virtually or in person, that there are things that they can use to signal rather than speaking, writing or typing. But in the same way, you can use hand signals for the quiet. Okay, so if you're giving the class online, just doing this and waiting until everyone and all your students must do the same and be quiet. So these, again, very simple but effective, because with lots of students, the sense of embarrassment if they've been talking while everyone else is quiet and waiting for them to be quiet is quite powerful, as you as teachers will well know. So there we go. We've got to the end. Brilliant. This is just future technology, things to be aware of. Again, as I said, there is already a lot of AI that we're not aware is already existing. Virtual reality environments could be great fun, will be great fun. And gaming worlds, bringing them with an educational twist on them. So as Monopoly in the past, gaming worlds maybe in the future. And that's it. Thank you for the whirlwind tour. And thanks for coming along the ride with me. And let's go for questions now.
Thanks, Laura. It was extremely interesting.
Thank you.
I actually, while waiting, I have some comments that I would like to talk about. Mm-hmm. I'll just keep the chat open. So if we have questions. I think it was extremely interesting, the fact when you spoke about competing against yourself. Mm. So that's something that really prepares you for what happens in real life after school anyway, because you always have to improve, but you are the person that it is at the center. So yes, that was a very nice point in my opinion. I don't know if you want to comment on that a little bit.
Yes, funnily enough, the first time I personally became really, really aware of this, I remember I was swimming, and I wanted to do a length, and I just did it in X time, and then I thought, so no, in fact, someone else said it to me. Oh, why don't you try and do it quicker the next day? It hadn't really crossed my mind. So I thought, okay, I'll try it again the next day. Next day is exaggeration, the next swim. And, so I tried it again. And then I thought, I set that. I just became faster than myself. And then I was like, shall I try and go faster again? And so it was, I was proud of the responsibility that I had taken on to then get better and better and better. But then it also made me really good at recognizing, okay, I didn't do so well today. Why didn't I do so well? Am I tired? What did I do yesterday? Am I feeling, a bit stressed? Have I just had an exam? And so it encourage that self-reflection on top of building my self-confidence and building. And then that is something I have found really, really, oh yes, should I unshare? I will stop sharing. Thank you. I found that really useful with everything now, whether it's work, obviously being self-employed, you have to be very disciplined. And so I found it very useful in my own management of my time and, dare I say, happiness, and being with other people and understanding that's how other people work as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because maybe teenagers, when they play a game, maybe all they think about is either winning or they never think about winning against themselves. So
they're always looking out rather than looking in, aren't they? And it's
absolutely, and that's all obviously connected to social emotional learning. I mean, it's definitely the student is at the center.
Yes.
And another comment I would like to say, because I noticed it during your talk, you talked about SMART targets, which is always something that I mean, when there are lessons and you have to do some things because the Ministry of Education says that you have to do some things.
Yes.
And thinking about SMART targets is not always possible. And that's a very good idea, because we always have to remember that this approach will appear in real life in any kind of environment. So that's another part I wanted to maybe have your comments on. Yes, or something.
I think you're totally right. And also just remind yourself, it doesn't matter if you forget about SMART goals for a while and then you remember again, that's fine. You can't remember to do everything all the time. So that first of all, and also, some of the SMART goals, a lot of them, mixed together, as my example with the time one is time and, it being realistic. And as you say, it is something that we naturally do. Let's say the teacher thinks, okay, I need to plan 4 lessons by next week. Is that actually possible? That's a SMART goal. So we are doing it constantly. So it just for students to learn that they set themselves realistic goals, because again, when they're looking out at someone else, they may set a goal based on what someone else is doing, which is completely irrelevant, because it's not, it's not that suits my knowledge and capacities and abilities. So it's being able to, yes, take responsibility and be independent in setting your own SMART goals is really, really useful.
Thank you, Laura. I wanted to ask you something following what Romina has just said, because I think it was extremely interesting, your talk, and you touched upon so many different things which are challenging for us teachers as well as for students. And I wanted to mention a couple of things you mentioned, and again, to listen to your comments on them. One is thinking about challenges, okay, and what challenges students in particular. So the challenge, I mean, to set your own goals, to challenge yourself against yourself, okay? But also the challenge which is set for a group of students. So sharing difficulties can help us and push us to work together and learn together different, different things depending on the level of each individual student, but learning together one thing. And that is linked to your idea of perseverance. So even though it might be difficult, keep going, keep moving on, keep trying. And the last point, which is more on the teacher's side, was the idea of making progress visible. So helping students understand and realize what they might have achieved, even though it's not, the top position, but it's on the way towards it. So I'd like to listen to your comments on those 3 points, basically.
So the first one, working together. Yes. So I think it's that element, isn't it, of essentially, and it can feel like it's being vulnerable to your group. So whether it's being able to own and say, I don't feel confident doing the speaking part of the challenge. Let's say, I'm just going to invent a challenge. Let's say we've got to make a film scene together about a historical event, whatever. Okay, so obviously we need screenwriters, we need costume designers, we need actors, within realistic limitations. So it's first of all listening to everyone. So you're managing the different characters, which could be a big one. So encouraging students to maybe sit in a circle so they can all see each other and they can all hear each other first. And then one option is everyone has, and it has to be timed, let's say 1-2 minutes to say, I'd like to do this because my strengths are this and my idea is this, and that's it. So everyone goes around and says that, so that then when you start the project, you know where people are coming from, rather than someone saying, I want to be the main actor, and everyone going, oh, I'm too scared because this person's quite dominating. And so that can help them work together because everyone's heard everyone's strengths. So then you can say, okay, great, now let's assign roles based on that. So then that'll help making sure that everyone, and if there's a gap, which is a great resolution opportunity, we don't have anyone who's confident at writing the script. None of us in our group are confident doing it. Okay, how are we going to work together to do it then? And so it's saying this. So again, you can go around one idea. What's your idea to solve this? What's your idea? What's your idea? Now as a group, let's evaluate which one's the best. Or which one shall we go with rather than the best? So I think that could be really helpful, and it can help students listen to each other more, to be able to work together effectively. I think that was your point 1, wasn't it? No, I forgot.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. Yes, it was absolutely. And actually, you gave us another, interesting example of a kind of game or activity we can develop in class. So great, absolutely. That was my first point.
Okay, great. Number 2 was?
Well, the idea of, so the perseverance, so that what you were saying, working in groups, you keep on working on what might be difficult, and even for everybody.
Yes. Yeah. Oh gosh, even for the teacher, gets to the end of term and that perseverance can start dwindling. So I think sharing. A really good way to do this is anonymously. So on a piece of paper, you can have, or online, obviously, you can have students write down or draw, whichever is more suitable, what they are feeling that they don't have the energy, motivation, or don't think they're able to achieve. Something like that. Put them all in a box together and read them out. So no one knows whose was whose. So there's no judgment going on, but they'll realize that loads of people have said the same thing. So this could be really, really helpful. And then have kind of like focus groups, or if your group is small, one group, with each worry, concern, lack of feeling like they're progressing, a suggestion or piece of advice. So then they're really helping each other. Okay, and then also because there'll be others, other things that students might not be feeling that this month, but next month they might be feeling what someone else said. So having them essentially sharing their problems. I say problems is a general word, and then coming up with advice and suggestions all together and anonymously. So that can really help be honest about worrying about your perseverance, and with the advice, suggestions that build your perseverance, because then you can implement one or two, and then that helps you carry on. And then you can have a review, maybe a week or a couple of weeks or a month later, how's it going? So that could be a really, really key way of building the perseverance, especially with the speed of curriculums that, rushing through everything. If you're not necessarily a fast learner, or, you just don't naturally learn at that speed, you can feel like you're trying to catch up all throughout the year, and you can feel like you're part of a losing battle. So realizing that everyone will be having no one is infallible, no one is always confident, then that can really help that feeling.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then we get to the, making progress visible, which closes the circle and possibly gives them, even to the ones who feel they might not be always successful, give them a sense of, having improved, basically, yes, and being on the right way.
Absolutely. And you're right, you have to see your progress, because if you don't, then you stop. And so another nice way of doing this is in the back of your notebook, just having like a weekly activity and again, this is a private thing, so everyone works on their own, and they just write down one thing they're aiming to do next week, and then the next week, what have they achieved? And that achievement doesn't necessarily have to be what they were aiming to do. And then when they start writing it down, this could be the end of a class. So, obviously during each class, they will have achieved something. I mean, we're all learning every second of our lives. And so they will start to see the pattern of progression going down their page that's in the back of their book or on their, laptop or phone or whatever. And because it's private, it'll stop them comparing. Oh, you've achieved more. No one's ever achieved more. Someone's just achieved something different, which could be more or less is completely subjective, because if it's easy for me, then I haven't actually achieved anything more because I haven't put any more effort in than you had to. So it's a nice private way of recognizing your own achievements, which will always be there. Students will always be achieving something. And then you can have a more public, at the end of a month or something, everyone illustrates their achievement in some way, and that could be in their own way. So letting their creativity go wild and making, like a proud poster or presentation or video about all of the class's achievements. And, then that's taking real great pride in celebrating everyone's own achievements. So as a teacher, you'll be aware if that's a good idea or not with your students. And it can help bring in that element of pride, because I think often, unless someone says to you, do you know how much you've achieved? You won't really notice. We are always our own worst critics. And so it often takes someone else to make you stop and reflect. So that's really key. Also for teachers to do it for themselves.
Thank you, Laura. We need to realize it first time. Very good. Now I was looking at the chat. It seems that there are only people saying thanks. Thank you for your talk and for suggestions. So I would like, Romina, if you agree, I would stop it here. I would thank Laura for her talk and for the many suggestions she has given us. And before saying bye-bye to everybody, I wanted just to remind you the last webinar, which is on the 20th of April, and it will be with Professor Arturo Cattaneo, full professor, English professor at Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore in Milan, and he will be talking about basically Shakespeare and Hitler. So it's going to be something about literature. It's going to be very, very interesting. So please keep it free for the 20th of April. Harry V and war propaganda in Laurence Olivier's and Kenneth Branagh's films. Okay, so a comparison between Shakespeare and Hitler. And I wanted to tell you also, for those of you who are in Fano or in the Marche region, that we are having an additional conference next Tuesday on the 21st of March, which is not part of the course, but it is an additional conference in English. It's organized by Centro Studi Vitruviani in collaboration with Liceo Nolfi Apolloni, and it is with Professor Martelius, who is Professor of History and Architecture at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, who is going to talk about Swedish receptions of Vitruvius from the 16th to the 21st century. So it's going to be, I guess, very, very interesting. And of course, the talk is going to be in English. So for those of you who might be interested and who might be in Fano or planning to come to Fano for an afternoon, please come along. It's going to be on the 21st of March, 5 o'clock in the afternoon at Mediateca Montanari, Sala Ipogea. You will get a certificate for participation for this one conference on its own, whereas for the recognition of the whole course, Think Outside the Box, as I told you before, it's going to be at the end of the course, and you will get it either via email or on the Sophia portal. So if there are no other questions, thank you everybody, and thank you everybody for being with us. Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much. Thank you, Romina. Thank you, Marco. Thank you to all the participants, and see you soon. Bye-bye.